Oi, what's that?
1,301, 1,000. Oh, yeah, I'm just counting the money that the government here in Alaska just gave me.
Why, you lost your job?
No, it's oil money.
What is that?
Well, because I live in Alaska and Alaska has lots of oil. When the oil companies take the oil and sell it and make a profit, all the residents of Alaska get a dividend. An oil dividend.
Whoa, that is awesome. What are you doing now?
Oh, sorry, now I'm just counting my son's oil money.
He gets money too?
Well, he owns the oil just as much as every other Alaskan resident.
Oh, yeah, I guess.
Oh, hey, I mean, talk about the lucky country. You've got every mineral under the sun in the ground there. You must be getting so many mining dividends.
No.
A coal dividend?
Nah.
A gas dividend?
Nope.
Uranium dividend?
Nah.
Lithium dividend?
Nope.
Well, you exported just as much oil as we did, and you're telling me you don't get an oil dividend?
No. Actually, I think we subsidize our fossil fuel companies more than they pay us in royalties.
What?
Come on.
Oh, hang on. You pay them to take your resources so that they can make billions of dollars. And you're not getting a dividend.
Don't have to laugh.
You're getting scammed, bro.
Yeah, okay, I guess we're not as progressive as you guys.
Okay, so it looks like we are live on YouTube. So that's kind of a miracle in and of itself. And I am very pleased today to be here with Michelle Young. And she is going to be presenting a very interesting, a series of documents, petitions, and I hope some of the background of her own legal case that kind of led in this direction for her to become something of an expert in advising people on how to fight this system and the legal system in particular. Maybe that's is a good summation. Michelle, introduce yourself in your own way, please.
Hi, Kerry. It's an absolute pleasure. I've been following you for many, many years, and I just want to thank you from humanity, for all the amazing work you have done and how you've woke us up with all the best whistleblowers from inside government regarding black budget, black operations. And that's will link into what we're going to speak about this evening with what I've unraveled with financial crimes.
Great.
Over 18 years of serious investigations with some of the best whistleblowers who I'm also honored to be working with.
Excellent. So with that in mind, you have a very important website. So what I'm going to do is bring your website on the screen here, and we're not going to keep it up the whole time, even though we're going to be probably dealing with a lot of the things on that website. Okay. So this is not the front page of your website. Let me see if I can bring that up quickly.
Sure.
So here's the home, right?
Yes.
And now you can kind of direct me as to where you want me to go from here. So we have a beginning page of your website. You want to start from here, or
yes.
where do you want to start from?
That would be great. I mean, let's just start with Mega, Make Earth Great Again. So I've always said this is a godly website. We're in biblical times, Kerry. And the amazing whistleblowers that I've had the privilege to work with over the last 18 years in these deep investigations into the financial crimes, it's all on this website. So I think it's very educational for people, even people that are very much awake like you and I, because there's certain areas that we've covered, which I don't think are even within the truth movement. A lot of the people are probably aware of a lot of these particular issues. I'm very privileged to be working with a whistleblower chartered accountant, and what she can show is a little bit like Catherine Austin Fitts. there is no auditing being done in our country. And I'm working with her also on the insolvency frauds. And Rothschilds, which is obviously Grant Thornton, which is a Rothschilds company, they brought in the late 80s, 300 examiners into the insolvency service. So that's where they were starting their new world order, where they were spread out these examiners, which are official receivers across our country, to bankrupt people unlawfully. Now, in this country currently, there are 700 fraudulent bankruptcies per day. And as we know, as the great Klaus Schwab, who's a relative of the Rothschilds, said, you'll own nothing and be happy. So I think the bankruptcy issue is a very important thing for the whole of humanity to deal with here and now. The same as the family court frauds, which I'm pretty good with because of, I started my litigation in 2007, had a huge case that went on till 2013 in the family courts. So those two areas, I'm very good at litigation because they taught me well, the other side, the enemy.
Okay, now I'm going to pause you there because a lot of people are going to be saying, because I read your bio and we haven't read your bio for people, but it's quite a good bio and we can bring it up on the screen in a second. But what I'd like to do is introduce you more formally and have people understand, who you are, why you went to court. Okay. And if you can explain, are you a lawyer or did you become one, or a barrister as in English? Because, I'm going to have a large American audience, but I'll have a worldwide audience. So they're going to wonder how it is you know what you know, so to speak. So if you can explain from the beginning who you are.
Right, Kerry. My journey started in 2007 within the litigation of the family courts. I was married for nearly 20 years, happily married, very successful couple. We've got 2 beautiful grown-up children. I started divorce proceedings in early 2007. Now, the first day I ever walked into the courts, I realized the system was rigged, as the great Donald Trump would say. It's a pantomime what's going on in there. You instruct lawyers and they are acting for you, and it really is an act. I then started to do a deep investigation into what was going on within the family courts. And over my many years of experience, it led me to understand exactly how our assets are being stripped through the court system. For instance, in a family court, if you're going through a divorce, you have a document called a Form E. I'm not sure if you have it in the US, but in the United Kingdom, it's called a Form E. So both parties, the husband and the wife, have to put down the assets they own. So from day one, they know your net worth. And quite often, more often than not, the law firm that you instruct are in collusion with the other side, with the lawyers on the other side. So it's vast fees in racketeering. And then when they find out where your assets are, they quite often take the whole lot, to be frank.
It says here that you're an entrepreneur, right? And that you had some successful ventures. You were in the fashion business, and then you got married, and you're going to explain all of this. And then you basically had a divorce. Nothing new on that, or very common. Some years later, but you were both involved in the tech industry. It says. And this is where the main part of your perhaps or the money that you had in your disposal that you had to go to issue with when you got your divorce. Is that right? Came from the tech industry. Am I right on that? Or do you want to clarify?
Absolutely. I mean, what we had some of the first the credit card machines. So we went worldwide with the credit card machines many, many years ago, chip and pin. And so that was one of the successful startups we had. And, we had many other major tech companies like that as great startups in the 80s when all this was taking off. Also very successful in the property industry. I was very successful myself as well, Kerry, before I met my husband, in the fashion industry. So I've got a natural flow. I'm a little bit of a visionary and an entrepreneur. I love solutions. I love things to look nice, and I I'm very much, I don't like any form of wrongdoing. Bit of a rebel. So when all this kicked off in 2007, it was the wrong woman to pick on, basically. That, we were a very successful couple. We were dynamite together. 2 beautiful daughters. We lived in the country, loved animals, very private life, but as soon as the worst thing that can happen is for you to take any case to litigation, because as soon as you do that, the lawyers get involved. And it's like they're like a bunch of hyenas, they play one against the other, and before you know it, it's a nightmare, Kerry. I wouldn't advise it to anyone that that was going to have problems within a relationship and they're married. I say the worst place to go to is a family court, And then when I started investigating the family courts, I then realised, it's not just the assets they're stealing, they're stealing our children. So, I've really gone down that deep, dark rabbit hole because I can't bear wrongdoing, and I'm seeing so many families losing their children as well as their assets.
What do you mean by losing your children?
Sorry, when this all kicked off in 2007, my daughters were 11 and 13. When this all kicked off. So, it was a difficult time because it was a big media case. They were, teenagers. And it was a big, big battle. When I used to go to court, the great thing is that I won all my applications.
Yeah.
I'm as a tactician in a rigged system. You'll see all my court orders on the website. I won all of those orders.
Were you successful because you had a great, I don't know, you call him a litigator or a barrister who argued your case very well? Or how does that work? Why were you successful in winning your cases, would you say?
To be quite frank, Kerry, I prepared all the documents myself. So I used to instruct them how to conduct my own litigation.
Okay.
So I used to prepare the documents, and I used to say, basically say to them how I wanted them to conduct the case, because the documents, what makes this case unique, I had some of the biggest orders in British history. So, and pardon my pun, draconian orders, in their system. So I had orders, and I all my evidence is irrefutable hard drive evidence. But what happened, because there was so much money involved, they ignored the evidence and ignored the law. Because I believe we was targeted as an extremely wealthy family to asset strip us. So I think the whole thing was exactly that.
But if you won your cases or your orders or whatever you call them, did you win your money at the same time, or no?
No, they wouldn't let me enforce it. So I won all the applications, but they wouldn't let me enforce the orders.
Oh.
So what actually happened when this kicked off in 2007, on the merits of the case, I managed to secure 3 lots of litigation funding, which is unheard of. But what happened, because my husband used this particular lawyer called Stephen David Jones. Sorry, I'll have to pick my dog up. She's crying. Sorry. Stop it. Um, she's a feisty chihuahua.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So basically, the lawyer, Stephen David Jones, who took power of attorney over our estate in 2006, when my husband realized I was going to divorce him, he took control of the whole estate. Now, that lawyer is now serving 12 years in prison for fraud.
Why
But
did
what
your
happened-
I'm sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt, but why did your
Yeah.
husband give someone power of attorney over your estate? Why would he do that? Why would anybody do that?
Stupid. Because he thought if he took what the lawyer promised him was he would make all the assets disappear in their family court, so it looked like he had no money. And then he'd hide all the money offshore. But
But
instead
that's
of
like,
that,
so your husband was doing illegal things, you're saying.
well, I mean, you say it's illegal. A lot of the husbands do it to their wives.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. It's a bit of a control thing, a power thing. And I haven't got anything against good men, but some of the men, but I don't blame the husbands so much. I blame the courts because they're racketeering. It's a business
It's
model.
set up that way. Okay, so
Yeah.
and you're talking about offshore, so they couldn't trace it completely. Is that right?
Well, actually, Kerry, that's what makes this case unique, because I have all the evidence from 2006, because I have got all the computerized records of the money flow from A to B where the money went to. So I've now just got to enforce it. So, and I'm in an amazing position now. I'm working with some really brilliant people, as well as brilliant women as well, who are blowing the whistle on exactly how the systems run. So I'm working with some beautiful men as well. I mean, really great people. They're not doing this for the money. They're doing this for the right reasons.
Okay.
So I'm in a different position now. In the old days, I was having all these heavyweight legal teams that majority were in collusion with each other to steal the estate. But because I've got all these computerized records showing we are the legal and beneficial owners of the assets legitimately, they're now in very big trouble. So in the background, I mean, 2 weeks ago, I was working at 2 a.m. with my ex-Ministry of Defence CID police officer. And at 2 a.m., they remote controlled and turned my whole phone off and wiped 5 months of data. But I'm not worried about that because I'm not stupid. I've already got all my data in secure locations. So they know I'm not stupid because Grant Thornton, as I said, which is a Rothschild company, in 2000 and moving on now, because going through the litigation over the years, strategically, my husband, because he had this lawyer, not realizing that when he gave him power of attorney, that they targeted us as a family, and then they was planned to murder him, which they did in 2014. He was thrown off a balcony in
Okay, so did he
2014.
really die?
He was murdered. Yeah, he was thrown out.
So
of the
he really
balcony.
did die. You believe that wasn't a fake? That wasn't a fake.
100% he was murdered.
Okay.
It was impossible, Kerry, for him to have landed on the railings from the window. He would have had to have flown, literally
All right.
flown. So it was impossible, the distance from the window to the railings. And in fact, within the next few months, I've got a whistleblower who's going to name the murderer.
Oh.
Where they paid an assassin to murder him for the estate.
It's
That's
beginning
all going
to sound
come
like a
out.
movie, but okay. No,
Yeah,
just
yeah. I mean, my life's been like a movie. I mean, the whole
So all
thing.
during this is the litigation's going on, and then sometime while this is going on, someone tries to kill your husband, or does kill your husband.
Yes.
And then you're still involved in the litigation to this day. This is 2024.
This going back on the timeline. So it starts in 2007. 2013, I have my final hearing in the family courts. The judge, the particular judge who's on the website on the newsflash page, who's involved with very naughty things regarding children,
Oh, no.
And that's all on there. Everything. I've got all the major whistleblowers. Everything's documented with evidence.
Okay.
He ignored the evidence and law. So that's in 2013. And then 1 year later, on the 8th of December 2014, Scott is murdered. And then a few months after that, they unlawfully bankrupt me, and all the court documents are fraudulent.
Okay. So you've got a great page here. I'm not going to click on everything, but I assume these are the things you're talking about, right? People can come here to look, right? The news flash.
Absolutely. Yes.
All right.
You'll see there's evidence regarding Justice Philip Moore, who was my judge on my final hearing. But Kerry, it's been a crazy journey. Going backwards a little bit,
Right.
at one stage, I was in touch with my MP, Karen Buck. And I said, look, we're a very wealthy couple. I said, there's a lot of very, very strange things happening regarding the corruption. I said, I'd like to go to HMRC's office and I'm happy to pay our taxes and get behind this. I said, the courts are corrupt and we need to get justice. I said, can you put me in touch with someone at HMRC? So she wrote back, she said, someone's going to be in touch with you. I get a phone call from this gentleman called Peter Harmsworth. And he sounded really, really rough and ready. And he said, what I'd like to do is meet you regarding the HMRC issue. If you meet me in the middle of a park, but you have to go on 3 different trains to meet me. I said, I don't know who you are. You don't sound like you come from HMRC. I said, I'm not doing that. I said, if you really are an agent working with HMRC, I'll meet you in their offices. So he arranged to meet him in HMRC's offices. But what I haven't told you, what I'm going to tell you before I tell you about that meeting in HMRC, I caused havoc within their private family courts, Kerry. What I did when I realised what they was doing to families and their children, to their assets, I started taking their mainstream media into their courts. So I was taking the lid off the private family courts, and I used to have an audience of about 60 mainstream media from all across the world. The judges didn't like that because they wasn't used to having their private hearings heard public.
Okay.
So I think I was one of the first people to manage to have the family court open to public hearings, and I made my case a public interest case for that reason.
Very good. Very good.
So they punished me for that. So they used to, really, really, the final hearing, the judge punished me. It was a 4-week trial. Not only did he ignore the evidence and the law, he branded me a conspiracy theorist all over their mainstream media, newspaper.
Right.
And then he handed the judgment out. It was a predetermined judgment on the last day of the 4-week trial to their mainstream media rather than me, and ignored all the irrefutable evidence I had of the case.
So you lost the case, technically.
Well, no, I got a judgment order.
Yes.
And I won all the applications in there.
I get it.
But they still ignored the amount of money that was involved with irrefutable evidence.
Okay. Yeah.
And rather than enforce that, they ignored the law to enforce it and ignored the evidence on how much. And so this day, they still will not tell the truth. That's why I've done many shows on alternative media. And I put the documents up to prove that the mainstream media, and I've put the mainstream media on notice and said to them, now I've set up the Make Earth Great Again website. If you lie any more about me and my family, I'll sue you.
Mm-hmm. Good.
So every time they come for me, I just give them the website. I said, the evidence is on there. That's the truth. And
So, okay, but so are you saying that they're sitting on your money? Would that be the right way to look at it?
Oh, they've stolen the money. Yeah, they've stolen the money. But the beautiful thing is, what they tried to do, Grant Thornton got involved in 2010, and they tried to take all my original evidence. I fought them and won. So I've got all the original hard drives, documents, and right now I'm in the middle of exposing what they've done and the particular lawyer who took power of attorney of the estate. So I'm reversing everything they've done as we speak now.
Okay,
So
now let me ask you.
Yeah, sure.
Did you write a book?
I haven't yet, no.
Oh, you should.
No.
You should definitely. This is great, but you had to go through these years of litigation, right? Going to
Yes.
court, fighting court, dealing with these people that are supposed to argue your case, so and so. And then only to have this final judgment, more or less, that threw out everything and just decided that based on nothing. What was their written conclusion? Can you encapsulate that?
I mean, look, they awarded me out of billions that were stolen, which I have the evidence of.
Right.
They awarded me 26.6 million from the billions that were stolen.
Right.
But where I am now, all I can say is God help them. Because and now I'm going to go forward, Kerry, because of the havoc I was causing in their family courts, and the judges didn't like it, and nor did the law firms. Because you look at it, Kerry, and I'm sure it's the same in the US. When you instruct a law firm, those judges that are sitting on those benches are all coming from the same chambers as those law firms. Isn't that surely a conflict of interest to start?
Sure.
It's just one big club.
I mean,
and
our courts are so corrupt over here that I have no trouble believing you. Okay. I already know that, these people are, they're all in bed together and they all know each other, and they've all, they play these games with us as their pawns. And so they tried to stop me. They searched all my stuff, etc., and did ludicrous stuff to me. And then all of a sudden it stopped because this one person, I guess, gave them the word, and then it was hands off, more or less. Although they still tried to kill me a couple of times in England. I absolutely unequivocally have tried to do that. And I know they have. Yeah. Okay. So, people would say, well, if they tried and failed, they didn't really try hard enough. But no, they wanted to basically scare me to death so that I would stop. Right. I mean, I don't know if you had things like that. Did you?
Lots. Yeah. Yeah. They tried to kill me in an NHS hospital a few years ago. A German Nazi physician. Yeah. I would never go back to their hospitals again.
I'm with you on that.
I've had a couple of attempts. Yeah. I mean, coming on to this now, when I went, this Peter Harmsworth, where I had this phone call, and I said, look, if you're really from HMRC, yes, I'll meet you in the HMRC offices with my whistleblower, my source with the evidence. So I went with my source to HMRC and met Mr. Peter Harmsworth. When I arrived at the HMRC offices, it was two men in black suits. They said, we won't give you our real names. My name isn't really Peter Harmsworth. I work for the intelligence service, and the other one said the same. And it was like a scene from a movie. As I'm going in the lift with them, they're laughing. They said, we don't like what you're doing in the mainstream media with the courts. Wow. And that your life is at risk. But then they laughed and they said, we know you're not going to stop. So I just smiled at them. So we sat in this meeting with my source, and the source I had, it was actually quite hilarious. He was Portuguese. And so they've had the same conversation with him. He came in the lift with me. So he was a witness, and he's done a witness statement to everything, proving everything I've just said. So he, in his strong Portuguese accent, he said, Mr. Whoever, because they made a joke that they wouldn't give us their real names,
Right.
two of them.
Wow.
And we had the meeting. And then after the meeting, they met my source separately and handed him £10,000 in cash.
Oh God. Right.
So I've got that evidence too.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, but I think this goes, the men in the black suits, this all goes back, Kerry, on my research over these many years into the investigation on the financial crimes. Who is auditing the auditors? There's no auditing being done. This is black operations, black budget money. And that's why the men in the black suit didn't like what I was doing, exposing the financial crimes.
So
and how
tell me
they're-
a little bit, not a lot. Tell me a little
Yeah.
bit about what you mentioned earlier about the judge being involved in, I don't know whether you call it pedophilia or something. Is this common knowledge? Is this in the media? Are these accusations in the media? Or is this, I mean, how do you come by that information?
Well, I've actually got a veteran that I work with on the family court frauds, and he managed to get me the material that's on the newsflash page regarding Philip Moore, the judge that conducted my final hearing. Now, I have to say to you, Kerry, so that's the document that involves the judge that held and conducted my 4-week final trial.
Okay, but this is a completely separate matter, right? This is just simply
Well-
that so you're saying he was your judge in a family court, but he has
Yes.
a background that is in question, or does he have
Well, it's in
litigation
question.
going on in his own life, or is he accused of crimes outright, or how does this work?
Well, no. I mean, it's just on my website. I mean, at the moment, he hasn't. You know, that I just put the information out there. And this is why, Kerry, within the website, you'll see the 2 petition pages: one on the
Okay.
family court frauds, and one on the insolvency court frauds. And so, what we would like the people to do worldwide with this Make Earth Great Again website is sign the petitions, and we've made it very simple. We've put where the 10 commandments are, and then you'll see the bullet points of what to look for if your court documents are fraudulent. Can you see all those bullet points?
Yes.
So this will help people worldwide to check their court documents to see if they're fraudulent. And I guarantee most people that look at their court documents, when they look at those bullet points, will find out that they are. And then we would like people to sign whether they've been defrauded in the family courts or the insolvency courts. And we've kept it very simple. We've said, put your final judgment order. So you know, put the number in, so we know it's authentic. And then we've asked them to name the judge who conducted the hearing and the law firm. Now, if we start doing this worldwide, Kerry, and we can organise it where in each country we name the judges, we name the law firms, you put 60 words of what happened to you, we'll start seeing it's the same situation everywhere. You'll start seeing the same named judges, the same named law firms. You'll see that the court documents are fraudulent. And this is how we turn the system around, because then we're naming the same perpetrators, and then we remove them from the system, and then we bring back our constitution into our government and into our court. Because once these people are removed that are committing the crimes time and time again by naming the same lawyers and judges, we then have a constitutional system. Does that not make sense? Bring back the constitution worldwide.
Well, it does, but in America at least, and England, it is important to keep in mind, is a relatively small country, an island country, has a wide reach around the world. Nonetheless, the kind of petition you're doing here and the fact that you're having people put their own information in and show, and name names and so forth, that's a little different. It's more than actually a petition, really, I would say.
Yes.
But, so I think it's a great idea. I don't know. Well, let me ask you this. How long has this been out there, and how much of a response are you getting?
Well, to be quite frank, Kerry, I put it together about a year, 18 months ago, but I haven't done enough media on it yet. And
Okay.
I've just got someone who's going to fund it. So now it's going to be funded, because I can't do it all as one person. We need a whole team. So
Okay.
now we'll have a team on board within the next month or two. But in the meantime, with your great audience, people can start signing it and naming the judges, naming the law firms, put 60 words. What happened to them? Look at the bullet points. How was you defrauded through your court documents? We put all the major points to look for on why your court documents are fraudulent. Well, if we start doing this worldwide, we're gathering the data. And then people will start looking at the website and say in each country, saying, hold on a minute, I've signed in Australia, I've signed in the US, I've signed in the UK. That's that same judge, that's that same law firm. Those
Right.
60 words of what happened to that person is exactly the same as what happened to me. Then we start seeing the collusion worldwide, and that's how we then can reform this system. Because once we all know that the system is rigged, no one has done this before to gather the data to show it's the same.
No, I like that
people.
idea. Yeah, gathering the evidence. Now, do you know who Miles Johnston is?
I've seen your shows with him. Yes.
Okay. Well, you should, I should introduce you to him, because he would like this, because he has several of his, he does a lot like what I do. He interviews whistleblowers and people who've had all kinds of strange encounters, etc. But one of the things some of his people have had is their children. The system tries to take away their children on made up charges and all this kind of stuff. And so they would be perfect people to fill out these forms and actually report on what may be some of the same judges, right?
Yes. This
Okay.
is what we need to do. We need to, because I know that judge I know a few other cases, and one particular mother was so distraught what this same judge, Justice Philip Moore, did to her. She couldn't even get her judgment order. She had a nervous breakdown.
Right.
So this is what I want to do, Kerry, is then we start seeing it's the same perpetrators committing
Yes.
the same crimes in the courts.
I know this is a little off topic, but it's kind of strange coincidence, you might say, that, how Kate Middleton has disappeared and the children have disappeared, and whether or not, what's his name has also disappeared. In other words, there you've got a family where they've already started to disappear, and people supposedly don't know where they are. And I know they're playing a game, and they had the photograph with their hand, these hand signals and all this nonsense.
Yeah.
So yeah, it probably is not what it seems, but case in point, right? There is a lot of messing about with what we know of, people like us know of, as the courts trying to get involved in controlling families and taking away children, so that they can then put them into, various programs, maybe even put them into child trafficking, and so on and so forth. So there's probably a whole through road going from that angle, the family courts, through to child trafficking, for example, right?
100%. I mean, I know of one case at the moment, I'm not going to mention names. There's a grandmother, her daughter's been heavily sedated and drugged, and she's being kept in prison. And two of the grandchildren she's managed to get back. The 2-year-old is currently being heavily drugged, bruises all over her bottom. I mean, it's just insane. And I have to say to you, Kerry, it's so bad, it's so evil, that a lot of the veterans now are going to these courts and they're taking it into their own hands, because it's so out of control. I mean, I've worked with Robert David Still. And
right.
as he
Okay.
said,
Talk a little bit about that, because I'm sorry we didn't touch on that at all yet.
Yeah.
But, of course, I knew him and have interviewed him many times.
Amazing.
What was your interaction with him? Why did you get involved? How did he find out about your case, or was that even related?
Well, I worked with Sasha Stone for a few years. Previously, we shared each other's sources. I worked very close with Sasha. And so he introduced me to Robert.
All right.
Then we did the ITNJ in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that on the financial crimes. And so Robert was conducting that hearing with a few other judges. And so I worked closely with Robert. And as he always said, the financial crimes are interlinked with the child trafficking. The glue is the paedophilia.
Right.
And it was an amazing experience. I loved Robert. He's a genius. And I love the fact he also then really went, once he started working with me and my whistleblower chartered accountant, and we did, a whole thing on the Michelle Young case, and there's a whole section of some of the people I work with. I think it opened his eyes up to the securitization side of things, and he started doing shows all about the securitization, how they're financially securitizing we the people, our assets and our children, which
Okay,
is
so
another
you
big part of this.
kind of define this term securitizing.
Well, we're securitized from birth through our birth certificate. So everything we ever make, we are floated on the stock exchange. And I know that sounds crazy, Kerry.
Okay, so you're relating to securities when you say securitizing. It's just a weird use of the term.
Well, when I say that, I've been down every rabbit hole because I'm very curious, like yourself.
Okay.
So I worked with a friend of mine, and she was, her name's Bibi Bacchus, who I introduced to Sasha Stone. And she's an expert on the UCC, the Universal Commercial Codes.
Mm-hmm.
So I was with her one day, and I said, all this straw man, and we're securitized from birth through our birth certificate, through the Cestui Que Trust. I said, I'm very much a factual person. I said, I like to see evidence. So they said, right, Michelle, go home, bring your passport, bring your national security number, and bring your driving license, and we'll show you how you're traded. So I thought, okay. And I was with the whistleblower chartered accountant this day. So we're all sitting together, and I bring the 3 documents. They plug in my numbers. I don't know how they did it, but they showed me how I was being traded on the stock exchange. So this all links to the financial crimes, because all these assets are stolen. There's no real law on bankruptcy. It's another facade.
Okay, could you say that sentence? I'm sorry, could you say that sentence again? There's no what?
There's no real law on bankruptcy.
And what does that mean exactly?
Well, the whistleblower that I've worked with, she showed me that I think it was around in the late 80s, early 90s, she showed me that with the Insolvency Act, the act was put through, but not the law. I can't remember the exact year, but I've got all the details, and I can prove this because my ex-CID Ministry of Defence police officer, we checked it after she told me this. And so with the year that, I think it could have been 2005, it might have been around that time, but they didn't they put the law through, but not the rules. So if they don't put the rules through after that year, it doesn't exist. So the whole thing is a scam anyway. The whole thing, bankruptcy, is a scam. I did a little exercise, Kerry. Michael O, who's the ex-Ministry of Defence police officer I'm working with, who's brilliant on the fraudulent court documents, excellent on criminal law, excellent on the insolvency law. We had 9 cases with mine included. We investigated these cases for 9 months. Billions stolen. The 9 cases we could show on a one-page document, and I can share you that on the next show, and I'm happy to share across the world so everyone can look on what to look for. We did a one-page report because one thing that it taught me about litigation, you keep things simple. So there's no room for the other side to move. So we did a one-page report on each of the 9 cases. We then showed the assets they were stealing. Now, within that one-page report, we showed that the bankruptcy documents were fraudulent and why, which are the bullet points are on the petition pages on the Make Earth Great Again website, which you've just shared with your audience. Then we could show that Trust Online, within these 9 cases, Kerry, that the Trust Online document, which is a government document, there were no judgments or debts against any of the 9 cases or any of our names, which proved that the court documents were fraudulent. Now, that's a hard thing to get your head around, what I've just said to you, yes. So the whole thing is...
Let me ask you the kinds of questions that a person would naturally ask.
Okay, sure.
You're saying they're fraudulent, and I see your list there. I've flashed that on the screen, and I can see that, I know about validating documents and so on and so forth a little bit. And the question is, how do they get away with this for so long? I know they have a long history with imprisoning people that supposedly are bankrupt, but is there any way to explain to us how this fraud can be going on and yet you can be correct in what you're saying?
Very simply, the banks, they have a double set of books. So what they're doing, if their bank sheet is on low, then they asset strip people and they find a way of bankrupting them unlawfully. That's why there's 700 bankruptcies, unlawful bankruptcies a day in this country. So if you have an asset, you're a target. So they'll find a way to take your assets from you. In my case...
Okay, what is an example of a way to take an asset? And let's name the asset. Would it be a car? Would it be a house, property?
Yes. All of those things. Well, they can attack you. They can, for instance, if you've got a successful company, they can just literally come in and say that you owe a bill or something when you don't, and then they start litigation, orchestrate litigation. In my case, my husband literally allowed them to come and take everything from us by signing that power of attorney. As soon as
this guy who's now in jail, would they have taken over when he went into jail, for example?
He is still complicit in the fraud, but there's other third parties as well. Yes, they're fighting like a bunch of hyenas over the amount of money they've stolen.
So these are patterns, I guess, patterns of behavior, of illegal behavior. Is this only happening to relatively wealthy people? Because you said it's focused on assets, or is it just anyone?
Anyone that has an asset is a target. I mean, this is systemic across this country. It's really right.
Fascinating.
And I think it's the same worldwide. It's not just here. Mm-hmm. This is part of their plan, their New World Order plan. They want to asset strip everyone. So the system, it's just out of control, Kerry, what's happening in the courts. It
sounds like it's a kind of a gang approach to systematically target maybe a certain class of people, but maybe not, and get their assets from them. This is a way of controlling people, right? If you're in the courts and you're being litigated against, and and whether they can have your asset or not, or whether they let it go back to you, and so on and so forth. Is that kind of what you think is going on?
Well, it's no different to President Trump, is it? Look what they're doing to him with the election fraud.
That's right.
And to
I
be
mean,
fair,
yes. Well, the
yeah,
valuation of his Mar-a-Lago estate, for
yes,
example, is a really case in point, which
yeah,
is so obvious. I mean, see, I don't understand how they get away with this stuff because it's extremely obvious, right? So
yes,
people even in the real estate community around that Mar-a-Lago estate have valuations of their land and their assets, right, which are at astronomical levels. And he was supposed to keep on some ridiculously low level because someone came along and just stated it was that. I mean, and the courts decided that, which was a lie. That is actually, perfect evidence of fraud by the
yes,
courts in our country, of course. And they, but they got away with it with a very famous person, a very wealthy person, over a very amazing asset, which, according to 107, he's been there. He knows Trump well. And he basically said that they joked over the value of Mar-a-Lago, which was, just crazy. I mean, that there was no way it's worth what the courts were claiming. So is that kind of the same thing you're talking then?
exactly the same. It's exactly the same. They're doing exactly the same thing. Yeah, yeah.
Well, that's kind of an inside look at how they might be controlling even what you might call an upper middle class echelon of people to do their bidding, in essence, or to kind of have tabs on them, I guess. Limitation, right?
Well, what I believe they're trying to do, Kerry, they're trying to take away the visionaries, the entrepreneurs that keep the whole, this country, America, anywhere, affluent, so we need people that are entrepreneurs, visionaries, creatives. That's what makes the world go round.
It's like, but it's a level of what we call the pyramid of power. It's a level.
Yeah.
So that's the level at which they're controlling, maneuvering those people into slots and into levels of control. So that is it's kind of a fascinating area. Now, getting back to your petition, but do you really think some of those people are going to come and sign your petition? I'm not sure they would.
I think everyone should sign it because we have to make the change. Kerry, we've got to be transparent. Right. Unless people put the spotlight on who the judges are, who are the law firms, how are we going to make the change? Everyone's got to have. They've got to be able to tell the truth and be transparent what's going on in the system around the world. The only way to do this is by naming them.
Yeah, I agree.
We've got to name them.
Personally, I think this is a fascinating investigation that you've got going on. You're embroiled in a personal way, but I also find it just, because this area of society is kind of manipulated and hidden. Trump, in Trump's case, he is a perfect example of how they take someone and try to mess with you. I can say on a very, I have only nothing really financially, but what they did to me recently is a perfect example of this sort of thing, because what they did is Wells Fargo is a worldwide bank, right? And I was with them for most of my entire life since I was a kid and started earning money, like 18. And more or less overnight, they decided to close all my accounts, which wreaked havoc on my entire company and financial life, right? Then I had to go over to Chase. Ostensibly, the reason was this technicality that they decided to focus on, which was absurd. And it basically amounts to harassment. They may be doing it to a few other people, but I was told by an insider, a Wells Fargo person who took pity on me, maybe because I, talked to her and stuff, but she actually helped me, behind the scenes. But she said she'd never seen anything like it, literally, what they did to me. But see, I'm a radical, I'm a person that they want to target. And so they go after you, right? And we're people
Yeah.
like us are very familiar with that sort of thing. They play games with you, they audit you, they find a technicality where you're supposed to have violated the law, blah, blah, blah. And Sean David Morton, my very good friend, who's dying of cancer because they threw him in jail, the SEC, on charges of which he was innocent. And that's a whole story in itself. And I've got a video interviews about that. I don't know if you've seen them. But he's a case in point as well. He and his wife were targeted because of the books he writes, because he had contact with a whistleblower who could reveal what's going on behind the scenes in the secret space program. And he has all sorts of intel that he wrapped into these fiction based on fact books, Sands of Time, and threw him in what you call a white collar prison, except they ended up shipping him illegally across the United States somewhere to a horrible place and a prison. And they actually, the guards came and kicked the shit out of him. They stripped him, kicked the shit out of him, used those water hose things on him. I mean, and this is a very peaceful man. Long story short, but we're coming back to this full circle here where you're talking about this rung of people that are being focused on as well, their assets stolen. And as you said, their children, and there seems to be a link to child trafficking through this whole system, right?
Yeah. I mean, they targeted me so big, Kerry, because I'm quite, I'm pretty good at litigation. And, that's why I'm coming back, and God help them, because I've won everything and it's just now enforcement. Mm-hmm. But they used to go into court. I'd have my team of lawyers with me. Then I'd have Grant Thornton, a Rothschild company, with 8 to 10 of their bodies, the other side. And then the Crown with HMRC, with 8 to 10 of them, their side. That I had to pay through my own litigation funding all their fees, and they did it on purpose. They used to go to court heavy-handed, HMRC, the Crown, Grant Thornton, Rothschild, so they burnt all the fees so they could steal my estate.
Yeah. Have you been contacted by other people who were successful entrepreneurs, etc., who had similar legal things going on, especially women?
Not just women, men as well.
Really? Okay.
Oh yeah, and don't think it's just happening to. It's happening to everyone, whether you're a billionaire, a millionaire, or an everyday person. You've got an asset, they're targeting you. I know lots of people that were in the same bracket as me. I'm working with people from all different walks of life, Kerry, and it's exactly the same fraud being conducted. I think we're in a great place. Now, I worked, it was funny, for many years with a man, I'm sure you've heard of him. I believe he was murdered, Gordon Belden. He was the Finchley Road guy. He was the guy, they called them the boiler rooms, where it was all the shell companies with the politicians, and all these accountants, judges, I'm sure, and lawyers all setting up these shell companies. Now, what Gordon said to me was really interesting. I don't know how true it is, that the BBC is funded through the insolvency frauds that are being conducted in this country. And he had all the companies to back that up. I don't know how true that is, but that's what Gordon told me.
Well, that is an interesting tip.
Yeah, but it wouldn't surprise me. How is government funded? Through we the people.
Yeah. So there's actually, though, there's murder involved. And I wonder how often in these cases there is murder involved.
Quite a few cases.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. And then you get the media. What they did to me was the same as what they did to the great Donald Trump. BuzzFeed, which is funded by Soros.
Okay.
They came in and did a big documentary on mine. The Russian collusion thing, exactly the same as Donald Trump has. They've done the same to me.
Really?
Yeah. And it's BuzzFeed, which is funded by Soros.
Incredible. Yeah, they really went out of their way. So when your case was sort of in the media and sort of popularized, if you will, in England, what years was that? Was that like 2008 through 13, or was it certain years?
2007 right the way through. But the media, I mean, you know, I'm approached all the time by the mainstream. But you know, I'd look how I look at it. Where we are, Kerry, I think where we are in the middle of this great awakening. I think it's the most turbulent, but the most exciting time for humanity. I've spoke twice in Parliament in the last 3 weeks,
Really?
and I'm quite.
Are they paying attention?
Well, I'm quite a good infiltrator. So
All right.
I've made it very clear that all the court documents are fraudulent, who's auditing the auditors, and they're trafficking our children and assets through the courts. And I said it's the majority of the judges and the majority of the law firms. I'm not said it's not all of them. I'm working with a couple of very good political journalists at the moment, but they're old school.
Oh,
And so we'll see how it goes because, you know, I know who owns the mainstream media. So, you know, but, to be quite fair, Kerry, I said to them, you know, if they don't tell the truth, I'll just go on alternative media and put the documents up and tell the truth.
yeah, this is great stuff. And I have to say that I think you have something here. And I think that it's going to come. There's going to be some notice of this interview. I'm sure there might be some people that want to also interview you along these lines. Yeah. And now tell me a little bit. I know that we can't go on forever because people's attention span, they don't have a lot of time, and we want to keep this under 2 hours, but it's already probably going over. But still, I need to ask you about, you call this person your whistleblower. You've referred to him several times, but you really haven't told us much about that person. Can you explain that?
Yeah, what I can say to you, Kerry, I'm really excited where I've got to with this, because I'm working with someone that's going to name the person that murdered Scott, who knows where all my money is. I'm also working with some great women who are whistleblowers on the financial crimes. I'm working with sometimes till 2 a.m. in the morning. We're all strategizing. One's a whistleblower chartered accountant. Another friend of mine, she's really good on the shell companies where all the money's been funneled through on the securitization side of things, going back to you know how all this money's being floated on the stock exchange, because that's where a lot of this money ends up, that's being stolen unlawfully.
So are you familiar with, sorry to interrupt, but are you familiar with what's called the Pandora Papers?
Yes.
Okay. Because, and I guess, you know, sorry, I've got a blank. Anyway, this current whistleblower that's out quite a bit on these topics, but it's all about the offshore companies, you know that, right?
Exactly.
So is your stuff, have you, you know, is some of your information out there in that, or are they?
It's all about that, Kerry.
Yeah.
Because all this money's been restructured in offshore jurisdictions.
Yes.
But the beautiful thing is, I've got the audit trails where it started, where the whole fraud started through the power of attorney, where all that money was moved to from day one. So the evidence I've got, and I've kept it very simple, is irrefutable. So all I've now got to do is I've got to enforce that, really. That's where I am. And it's finding good, trustworthy people, you know.
Okay, now how does, when you say enforce, how do you intend to do that, or how is it done?
Well, there's more than one way to skin a cat, as they say. So I've got about 4 or 5 different actions ready to go on the attack, as they know. Because I mean, they you know, obviously, Kerry, you can imagine me and all the other whistleblowers I'm working with on the financial crimes, you know, they're messing with all of our software all the time, you know, because we're on the front line doing the work. But,
yeah,
you know, because the financial crimes,
yes,
you know, whoever controls the money controls the power. And how I look at this, Kerry, if we could, in every country in the world, to end all of these crimes against humanity, very simply, if we all did an independent audit in each of our countries with someone that could be trusted with a team, this is all over, because then we've traced all the money. How simple is that?
you must have already gotten people coming forward to you who have had similar things happen to them, who have all the documentation just as you do, right? And who are fighting these things unbeknownst to
Yes.
you.
But what I'm
But are they
saying,
testifying in the public? Are they known, in other words? Or is there, could you name like a case or something? I'm putting the Pandora Papers on the screen for people that aren't paying
Brilliant.
attention, because I do like these kinds of things, and I, as a journalist, obviously, and this is fabulous stuff, and great investigations being done by an international group of journalists about these offshore assets and accounts and so on and so forth. I mean, it's amazing. So it says like, investigative journalists consortium obtained a trove of more than 11.9 million confidential files. You're talking about incredible data, just incredible stuff. So that's already out there. That's actually a few years old. That
yes.
sort of outing of that investigation. And there's another group of data, which is called the Panama Papers, which has some other kinds of information. And I think they're working on another release as well now. So that's on an international sort of level. But there's also, have you ever heard about the economic hitman?
Yes.
Okay.
So
you know about
his video on the website. I've got his video on my.
Oh, great. Okay, but in a certain sense, this is not unlike what they do when they go into a country and basically offer them some money, loans and whatnot, and then take over their countries via their companies. Okay, so again, that's an asset-based system where they get themselves involved, and then pretty soon they own you.
That's right. Exactly. I mean, it's really, when you think of it, Kerry, it's identity theft. They take your companies and your assets.
Mm-hmm.
There's no other word. It is identity theft. They're cloning bank accounts. They're using fraudulent signatures. It's literally theft by pen and paper. There's no other words for it.
Right.
But I think, Kerry, I think where we are now,
mm-hmm.
I think there's too many of us awake, too many of us on the front line. And I know all the financial crimes where we're going in this country. We're getting to a great place. And I've got the great John Bingley, who's actually worked in America with some of the Trump's team's constitutional people. And we've got to bring back the Constitution worldwide to our governments and our courts.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Bring back the rule of law, and then all of this ends. But I believe the simplest way is every country does an independent audit from the government to find out where all the money's going in each country. We'll soon find out then where the 2% move the money worldwide, don't we? Against we the people, the 98%.
Right.
Why don't we all do that? Why don't we all do an independent audit? On BlackRock.
I'm sure there are reasons why this hasn't happened, but I do think that a unity of consciousness, in a sense, is what is going to ultimately expose all these paths and narrow alleyways around which they maneuver things and reveal what's been going on for centuries, really. It's also where certain countries right now are being infiltrated and taken over. I mean, Ukraine is a case in point under the cover of war. One group has already been in control there, like the mobsters, et cetera, and the underground, experimental labs and all of that being exposed by Putin. But I'm sure there's another group moving in right now. I'm not sure they're going to be the good guys. You know what I'm saying? There's also, they say Taiwan is quite a sort of a nest of this kind of thing. And they also say Israel, by the way, as well, because anyone who wants to put together a world financial system is going to know all of this stuff, right, from behind the scene, and
of course.
and so on. So it's kind of like a huge thing. The other thing is that right now China is heavily invested in Africa, and that's a whole story in and of itself, because you can imagine heavy investment somewhere and you're going to have to back your investments. That looks a lot like invasion, a soft invasion. They've tried to do the same in America, of course. And right now we have the border crisis with all the Chinese young military men coming in through the borders and potentially poised for some kind of civil war or whatever. I mean, in other words, and then the move of Ukrainians into England, which you have to be witnessing, right?
Yes.
Which is in and of itself another suspect layer. How they move populations, how they probably are taking their assets. They're taking assets, in a war-torn country, of course, right?
Yeah.
Secreting away some of these assets before they plunder whatever they do and kill people and so on and so forth. So these are the methods by which they control us, control the globe, focus. War is always a great cover story for anything illegal going on, seems to me. But this is great. Thank you so much for going down these roads with me. I hope we've covered what you wanted to say, because
Yes.
I probably sent you down some roads you weren't necessarily prepared to do, but it's just so fascinating. I just got very involved here. But I want to give you the platform here to say whatever you would like in closing statements, where you would want people to go, your website, the name of the website, and so on and so forth, and whatever else you have to say.
Okay, great. Well, the website is makeearthgreatagain.org.uk. The petition pages, the family court frauds and the insolvency court frauds, if people can look at that, look at the documents, sign the petitions, name the judges, the law firms, look at the fraudulent court documents with the bullet points. I think if we do that worldwide, that's going to make a huge difference. The bit I didn't cover, Kerry, which you would love, is I've got a major whistleblower with Lloyd's of London. And you'll see on the library page, we've got a list of 300 judges listed in England. Now that's come from, I'll just cover that really quickly. That's Lloyd's of London.
Right.
The whistleblower has these books which they never thought that we, the people, would get. They're called the Blue Books, where those judges on that list are syndicated with most prime ministers and presidents in the world, syndicated through nearly 300 of the Conservative Party. And syndication is a little bit like the securitization. The judges are syndicated with the Conservative Party, prime minister in this country, presidents in other countries. And they're syndicated through the Ministry of Justice. And the Ministry of Justice, that company is called Equitas, which has been taken over by Warren Buffett.
Oh, wow.
One of the globalists. Interesting.
Sure.
So all that's on there too. Yeah.
Okay. Now, when these judges are syndicated, can you maybe explain a little bit more of the word syndicated? What are you trying to say with that? Is this literal? Is it figurative?
Well, they're syndicated in, I believe, from what my whistleblower has said, and you'll see a show on the website, on the video link page, on the corrupt courts.
Okay.
And it's Lloyd's of London frauds. So they're syndicated where I believe they've got shares on where their assets stripping through the courts, through the Ministry of Justice. That's what I believe from what I've seen through the...
Okay, but how does that materialize? In other words, to... okay, here it is. Okay, so I'm going to the video links, I guess. In other words, when you say through the ministry, I guess I'm drawing a
The
blank.
Ministry of
How are
Justice
they
is-
syndicated? How in other words, I think you think they're linked up in some formal structure. Is that right?
Well, they're linked up. I think they're syndicated, and maybe this is how they're funneling the money through where they're a syndicate. Whether they've got shares in that, it's the whistleblower. I'd love to get her on, but she's got a gagging order on her at the moment.
Okay.
And yeah, so I mean, it's serious evidence, and it's through. I think it's quite simple. Kerry, why would the judges be syndicated with the Conservative Party? Why?
In England specifically, though.
In England with these blue books. But then I found it interesting. When I looked through the blue books with her, I saw prime ministers in Australia and presidents in other parts of the world. So maybe these blue books aren't just in England, that I don't know, but we've got the ones from England. That's why we've listed the 300 judges that were syndicated through these blue books, which is Lloyd's of London in England. But what was interesting, I was watching something the other day, and I noticed that Lloyd's of London controls the music industry as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's the Crown, isn't it? It's the Crown and Rothschilds.
Yes. Well, that's a whole story in and of itself, an incredible story, I'm sure. And I've had my own dealings with Hollywood and the music industry and worked in the music industry a bit. Okay, well, I think this is great stuff. And I'm sure people will be very interested. I know I am in watching the documentary you're referring to. So I'm going to go back to this page quickly. So you've got these links that people can take a look at, and various videos that are embedded here. And so that'll be great fun to watch.
In fact, can you see there? Go back. If you go back, you'll see Mira Makar, my whistleblower chartered accountant, there with Robert David Still. If you go to the next one,
here.
No, the other way. No, if you go back to the ITNJ, see
all
there
right.
on the left-hand corner, that's Mira Makar with Robert David Still.
Oh, all right.
That's one worth watching, Kerry, because she explains how the assets are moved through the...
Fascinating, right.
Yeah, it's fantastic. She's amazing.
Okay, yeah. And I think I have heard something about this, built into the inheriting of, supposed wealth from your family. They have, they put in some new law, at least in America, that is completely insane in regard to that. I don't know if you know which law I'm talking about, but it interferes with sort of the family lineage and the natural progression of where something goes from, like the husband to the wife and to the kids or whatever, and interferes with that such that you have to fight to get what's yours, basically.
Yeah.
In the past, it was an automatic thing. It just said, by law, you were entitled to whatever it was. So I know I'm being very vague here, but I don't have the details in front of me. I heard about it and I thought it was insane, because, they're obviously this asset steal of humanity, taking away our assets, trying to basically move people off their lands and off the heritage that's part of the lands. The reality of human existence is actually not scarcity, it's abundance, radical abundance, I would say. And this is the big secret, of course. They don't want you to know that. So they want everything in the system to operate on scarcity, whether it's a diamond or a piece of land or whatever. They want to convince everyone that it's scarce, just like the false depletion of oil. When oil renews itself, water renews itself, there's all what they say, groundwater going very deep. It's, there's all these scams going on around our globe to convince us, including the overpopulation, which is lies. If you ever fly in an airplane over the planet, which I have constantly, there's so much land that's completely untouched.
Yes.
And, what could be going on here we have huge amounts of abundance all around us. And we're just living in a system of lies. So one lie supports the other. But thank you very much for being here. Thank you for
having me
I'm
on.
so happy that we made the connection. And I want to thank Crystal and her FESIG, FESIG organization where I spoke. And I'm trying to get that copy of that video out. I think she's supposed to send it to me. And so I'll get that out. We had quite a great discussion the other day, and you were there briefly with everyone, right?
Yes.
And so any parting words for my audience?
Let's make Earth great again.
Okay. All right.
Bye.
You take care, and thank you very much.
So to not put this to a vote is to concede defeat. You only win when you run on the field and engage. And let me tell you, my government is engaged. We're all in.